this is a really long series, obviously, but is there like a moment in there that sticks out to you when you go back and remember it? It doesn't need to be like your favorite, but something you remember still.
Yeah, actually, I was just reminded of a part in the story very recently because I went to Hualien on the east coast of Taiwan.
Yeah.
And there's a famous old trail, which is called the Juelu Old Trail, where you basically walk on this very narrow cliff edge on a trail, and like you can see all the way down. And it's like,
yeah.
kind of scary. And there's actually a point in both the book and the series, and I think the series actually did it quite well.
Yes.
Where they're going across this mountain with the dwarves, where there's like this very, very narrow wooden bridge that is hanging off of the edge of a cliff, and actually it breaks and like some people fall down.
They just lose those people.
Yeah. But I'm not really like afraid of heights or anything, but I have to say, like in the series in particular, they did a pretty good job of like making you like feel pretty tense
really
about walking
that
on that
moment.
bridge. Yeah.
So then when you're like hiking in Hualien, you're like, oh, I kind of get it now.
Yeah, although it was really cloudy, so I couldn't actually even see all the way down.
Actually, I feel like that's kind of better.
Maybe. I'm not really afraid of heights. I wanted to see it. I was a little disappointed we couldn't see anything.
I guess the story itself makes a lot of sense then. But anyway, let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, comics, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and joining me today is my guest, Chris Gorin. But before I continue, I would like to remind you that this is the second of a two-part episode covering the series as a whole of The Witcher by Andrzej Sapkowski. Last time, we talked about the summary of the events that happen in the series, mostly focusing on the novels that were written in around the 90s. Today, we're going to be discussing our opinions on them, our experiences, and why we found them and what we found in them that was so meaningful to us. So if you want to hear the summary or you're a little bit unfamiliar with the events, I would recommend that you check out part 1 from last week. If you're otherwise prepared, then welcome back to part 2. So, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks.
Last time we spent most of the time kind of discussing the events that happened in the Witcher book, and like spoiled the whole thing for anyone else listening. So this time I want to kind of like get more into like your opinions on it, like why you think it is so popular as a story, because it's been adapted and like continued through 2 different mediums as well, and has really kind of had this staying power in our society, like in English-speaking society, as well as many other different languages. So, but to start, I'll start with like my regular questions first, I guess, and then we'll get towards those adaptations at the end.
Okay.
What was your first experience with this story, with The Witcher?
Well, again, I actually have to tie it into the game here because what happened was like I consider like when I was young, I was a big gamer. But basically ever since I started college, I feel like I'm more of an aspiring gamer, which is like I still like I look at video game reviews and like I kind of know what's going on in the video game world, but I like don't really play that much. Like
that's like so real. That's why I'm laughing. I'm sorry.
No, it's true because it's like I want to play more video games, and I even like have like in 2019 I bought like this gaming PC because I'm like I'm gonna play more video games.
This is the year,
and I've basically like completed 2 video games in the last 5 years.
Oh God, yeah.
But the games I love the most are like really immersive RPGs. And so like the Elder Scrolls series is actually like the best example. Like when Skyrim came out, that was one of those games.
I was going to ask you about Skyrim.
Yeah, in my 20s, like when I wasn't really playing games, like I played that game for like a long time. And I could still play it now. I haven't played it in a while.
I think Skyrim and The Witcher, the third video game in that series, both have a lot of like prestige
Yeah.
that goes along with them that
Yeah.
keeps them like replayable
Right.
for nostalgia, but also because they were just really well designed games.
Yeah.
Like to this day, like people just can't stop playing them.
Yeah, and that was kind of how I got. So I saw some reviews of The Witcher 3, and everybody was saying like, "It is one of the best RPGs ever made."
Yeah.
Comparing it a lot to Skyrim.
For anyone who's not there, it actually was like it was a very well acclaimed game, and it won the video game awards, like best game of the year, which is like the biggest awards in the industry.
Right.
So it's or rather, it's like the most sought after award
Yeah.
in the industry, I would say.
And it was like from this Polish studio too, so like it had a little bit more like credibility because it's like Polish story, Polish video game.
Yeah, yeah.
But they hadn't really made like a lot of these like AAA level games, you know, like the top games. So it was like a big breakout for them.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I was like, all right, I can tell that this is going to be the game that I'm going to play for like a long time.
This is going to be an obsession game.
Yeah. And so I decided like before I even buy this game, so I was like, I'm going to get a PS4 and play this game. But before I do that, I'm going to read all the books.
Oh my God.
So
I'm going to get caught up on the lore.
Yeah, because I'm like, I'll enjoy this game like so much more if I understand, you know, all the stuff. And so that's what I did.
Did you know at that time that the game was a continuation of the books?
I think I had read that. Like I really prepared, you know, like 'cause
Yeah, I'm
I
really
could
impressed.
just tell that this is going to be the next Skyrim for me, and so I was like, I want to like just maximize my enjoyment of this, and so like I did a little background reading on that, and then I went and bought all the books and I went through them.
Yeah, I admire the heck out of that. I not this game because I have yet to play this one, but like I definitely have had games of my own where like that's what I did. And I did the same thing with like the Assassin's Creed series when I saw it. Because like, you know, when you get those like stories that like, you know, or this like gameplay that like you just know you're going to get sucked into. Yeah. And I was like, I want to appreciate that.
I started with number 3.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't think that I didn't feel that I was lacking any knowledge because I had read all the books. And actually, not that much has changed in the world. Like, it's only about, like, which kingdom has a little bit more power and which doesn't.
Yeah.
But, like, none of the fundamental facts of the world have changed when you pick up Game 3. So.
I actually feel like reading a 9-book series is much more in-depth than playing the previous games. So.
I only read 7, I want to say.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, no, I did read that standalone one later. I listened to the audiobook. Yeah.
So then what about this series really caught your attention? Like, what makes you care so much about the story of The Witcher?
I think it's mostly the world building. For me, it's like, you know, I loved Skyrim and those because you really feel like you're in another world and it just transports you and it's complete. You know, it has lore, it has characters, like everything has been really well thought out and you can just really like put yourself in it. And it, you know, I admit it's pure escapism. You know, it doesn't really like add anything to my life, but it definitely is really enjoyable while I'm in it.
Well, but I would say, like, I think that there is something to that, though, right? Because I think stories that have kind of this, like, complete picture to them or something even close to that are very appealing for us to, like, drop into.
Yeah.
Versus, like, having things that you hand wave a lot.
Yeah.
I think... I don't think that it's like a shallow thing to like a game for it because like there's a lot of, or not a game, sorry, we're talking about the books again, but to like a story for it because I think there's a lot of like work that goes into that. Right. And to make something feel complete, to like go through and have like a history that like, it's obviously not real. So you have to have some sort of beginning point or you have to make people believe that it doesn't necessarily have a beginning. Like it just keeps going, right?
And I also think like it's a little bit of like a time travel thing because, you know, this universe, like many fantasy universes, is set in medieval Europe.
Right.
But it's got all of these like magic things. And one thing that magic allows you to do is relieve a lot of the misery that existed in like true medieval times.
Yeah.
Like you get a cut. When you fall, you know, we fall down on a rock, you get a cut, and then you die of an infection.
Right.
You know, it's like.
But the good news is we have a magic poultice.
Yes, exactly.
It'll take care of it.
Yeah, so it kind of like allows you to live in that world without having to. That being said, this is a pretty miserable world that the Witcher is living in.
Right.
It's constantly at war. He's constantly finding abandoned villages. You know, there's actually like some pretty. They don't like describe it, but they talk a lot about like some things that have happened to a lot of characters, like sort of without shame.
Yeah.
Like they sort of just like mention that soldiers like went into a town and like raped the women and then they just move on to the next topic. And actually, this ties into something I want to talk about in the show, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Oh, sure. But like, It definitely, like, as a game, nope, as a series, like,
Yeah.
you can feel that he wanted to go into the dark side of
Yeah.
fantasy and, like, a grit thing.
Yeah, I will
Like you
say,
said,
like,
mentioning things about sexual assault, I actually feel like is a cheap shortcut to get that
right.
most often, because I think
Yeah.
it's like a shock value thing. That's like, oh, it's historical. But talking about the series as a whole, like holistically, I think you're still right that like magic does let you kind of skip over what we understand to be like the real grit and struggles of people, being like, like botulism
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah.
like malnutrition, and kind of get to some of the more like fantastical or salacious aspects of it, like your village being razed to the ground.
Yeah.
Still a real and terrible thing,
Right.
but much more exciting to read about than like this town's carrots just never grow.
Yeah.
They've got a blight upon
Right.
them. So and introducing monsters to
And yeah,
explain away those things as
monsters, yeah,
well.
like steal children occasionally. I will
Yeah.
say one thing about the show is like it does have a lot of focus on kings and stuff, but
Hmm.
there are a significant number of characters and situations that just take place like in small villages with
Yeah.
village people. Although I guess they probably don't get as much page time as the kings, but
Right.
what are you gonna do?
Like history.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
tend to focus more on like the pretty rich people rather than like the everyday people.
yeah,
But I guess
sure.
that's what makes The Witcher himself more interesting, is that like that's where he normally operates and he gets
Yeah,
drawn into the kings.
it's kind of funny because he definitely has disdain for villagers,
Yeah.
but I think he has even more disdain for the elite.
Based on what we said last time, I feel like he just has disdain for other people in
Yeah,
general.
he does. He doesn't really like anyone,
So,
even like his main partner, which is the bard character.
right.
God,
What's his name?
Yaskir.
Yaskir.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like he sort of like grumbly accepts him following him around.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
He's even though he obviously really likes him and always saves his
Right.
life.
He's
and
he's
everything.
just like not a people person. Is like
No,
what we
no,
could
no,
say.
no. Yeah,
It is
he's a grumpy.
exacerbated when he has to deal with like the rich people who are very out of touch. I think he
Yeah,
does have some level of empathy for people who like are being tortured by monsters,
yeah.
but not enough that's like, hey, I'm really sorry that happened to you. He's more like, dang, that sucks.
Yeah,
Like,
another
I
character
can't
trope.
speak like him because it's not radio appropriate, but
Yeah, yeah. But one thing I will like another character trope it reminds me of is the kind of like renegade detective.
yeah,
That
that's
it's
a
like
good one.
all the commanders hate him, but they need him because he gets results.
Right, you're a loose cannon.
Yeah, you
Geralt.
destroyed half a city block, girl.
You got the mayor on my butt.
Yeah, sorry.
So that's okay. So then I guess let's get to, what do you think makes this a tale of our time? Or another way to say that is like, what meaning do you think that other people can or have found in this series?
I think this series is full of tropes. It isn't like super original, but it has a very complete image of its own world that's very well thought out. It has a lot of really compelling characters. The way that magic and everything works, and I don't know, there are some like social things it talks about. Like there's a lot of racism against elves, for example, is a big part of the story, and things like that. But I think primarily it's a very immersive world, and it has all the stuff that people like. It's got magic, it's got castles, it's got violence, it's got sex, it's got a child that has to be protected.
The prodigy child.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's got
yeah.
the end of the world coming, and it's so it's got all the stuff. I won't say that it's super original, but it's very well executed.
What we said before too, like the completeness of the world kind of like adds to that. Like we mentioned at the start of last episode, it really has had a lot of staying power in culture, having been like continued into two different mediums, either like to be retold and then to be continued.
Yeah, and I do think like it's one thing that it has over, say, like Lord of the Rings, because I feel like Lord of the Rings, it has the books and then it has the movies. But adding the interactive element to it, if you're the kind of person like me who just really wants to be like in the world, I think that like between the series, the books, and the game, it's like you really have a lot to work with to keep yourself in that world if you want to.
Yeah, when I think something being a tale of our time can also just be that, right? Like that is something that has held public attention for a very long time and continues to this day. Like the books themselves came out a while ago.
Yeah, originally in the 90s.
I was
think
thinking-
I think they got English translations, actually starting with the second Witcher game.
Yeah.
So the late 2000s.
And so then from there, the Netflix series was only made 2 years ago, was it?
Yeah,
3
maybe
years
3
ago.
or 4 years. It got kind of postponed from COVID, so it's
Yeah,
on
with everything
the
else.
fourth season is being filmed, but I think the first season came out in like 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I
So,
wanna say.
and still being produced, although there are many thoughts on that, right? I think that kind of can be a signifier. That's it. Like a signifier of something that is a tale of our time is just something like that can hold that public attention for such a long time. Whatever that might be for one person. Like maybe it's like how complete the story is. Maybe it's people find Geralt to be compelling in his disaffectation,
Yeah.
which is, I think, kind of a sentiment of today. And like we could say that like looking around at like having such terrible news all the time,
Yeah.
it's easy to feel a little bit like Geralt and be
Yeah.
like, I don't really care.
And the fact that he never really judges anyone, like, well, I wouldn't say that. He does judge people actually quite harshly.
Yes.
But the fact that he never takes sides and that he
Right.
resents everyone equally, like, allows
There's a
you
level of
not to
fairness.
judge him. You know, I think a lot of people look at characters on TV, especially if they're a main character, and they want to like make a judgment: is this person good or bad, or is like, can I be sympathetic to them or not? And I think it's really easy to avoid. It's not complicated to like Geralt
Yeah.
because he doesn't do anything outrageous, and he also dislikes all the bad because basically everyone else in the world is bad, and he
Right.
dislikes them all, and so it's really easy to like him.
Yeah.
Plus, he's
I
kind
mean,
of funny.
We know he's not racist, so
Yeah.
we can approve of that, right?
Yeah.
Like he doesn't like rich people.
Yeah.
Love that for me.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah,
Right. He
the
is
only
pretty good.
violence that he commits is usually because someone that he cares about is threatened or he's being threatened.
Yeah, yeah. I think
So
he's a if not empathizable, he's a very easily likable character.
yes,
I don't remember if we said it in this episode or the last episode, but you know, like the drifter who comes through town. He's the only one who can solve the problem.
right.
He's rough, but like he's got a heart of gold somewhere deep down
Yes,
for him.
Yeah.
So, well, we're almost out of time.
Okay.
There is one question I like to ask everybody here, and I want to say sorry to you in advance because you have a lot to cover with this. But if you could give The Witcher, I guess the series as a whole, if you could give it like your own one phrase subtitle, what would that be?
Oh wow. Subtitle: Witcher.
Yeah, The Witcher. Blah 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 blah.
In a in a world of magical chaos, there's one man who still knows how to get things done.
The one man who gets things
I don't
done.
know. That's a horrible subtitle. I'm not really sure I have a good one, but
Let's see.
yeah, just a fun magical world. I'll put it that way.
A fun magical world. What could we tie it to? Like an enduring magical world. Because like fun, I feel
okay,
like
how
fun
about
is like
this?
we just talked about how grimdark it was, like the bad stuff that happens.
A place you want to stay. Although
visit.
Yeah,
I don't wanna
a
stay
visit
there.
for a long. The place you want to observe. I don't know. I'm
You know
not
what? I
selling
feel like
this
it's
at all.
actually. I feel like it's kind of like we're getting closer. It's not necessarily that it's like a fun place to be,
Yeah,
but like we can't stay away.
yeah. It's
like-
like a car accident, but a beautiful car accident with
Like-
beautiful people. I don't know. None of my analogies are working here.
What about this? The Witcher, the world we just can't quit.
Hey, there you go.
There you go. Okay.
That's great.
I feel like if we call it a beautiful car accident, people will get the wrong idea.
True. Yeah.
Well, anyway.
I just can't quit you, Geralt.
That's true.
Yeah.
I like so many people. Oh my God. Well, except for Netflix, apparently.
Yeah. No, they're not quitting yet, but it's
They
Geralt
quit.
to quit.
Well,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
I guess. You know what? No, we don't have time today, unfortunately. There is a lot we could get into, but
Right.
unfortunately, we're out of time for today. So thank you so much for joining me, not just for one, but for 2 episodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris, I've had a lot of fun talking about this.
Me too, yeah. And I hope it's fun for listeners because I could talk about this for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was fun for me to like learn about the whole series. I had a lot of questions and things that like I knew passingly. That I did get those questions answered here today, and that's good.
Okay,
and now I know how the series ends. If you guys want to know, you got to go back and listen to part 1. If you
Yes.
didn't,
And I'll have to reread that last book because I'll have to refresh myself about the exact ending.
now that we've talked about it, you want to get all your ducks in a row.
Exactly, yeah.
So anyway, thank you to everybody else out there for joining us on Radio Taiwan International. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, once again with my friend Chris Gorin.
Yeah, thank you.
And we have been discussing the series The Witcher, the world we just can't quit, a tale of our time. We'll see you next time.